is going to tip. The Caucasian population here, fertility's down, and we're aging as a demographic. We're aging. And if you look at the Hispanic population, and they're primarily Catholic, it's like one more child per average than the Caucasian population. It's going to happen.
But that doesn't make us a Hispanic nation. I mean, that just
we're going to get there.
That just no. That means that they have that they're ruling everything, and that's not.
Okay.
That's a bit paranoid.
A choice of words, but that kind of demographic seems to be in play.
I'll agree with you with the demographic, in that their population is increasing more rapidly than the Caucasian and others. But you know, I mean, we're supposed to be the melting pot.
In our choice of words here, because right now, everybody here looks pretty Caucasian to me, unless someone's got a secret that they're going to bring out. And it's bothered me from the view of the progressive blogosphere, and particularly with the organizing we've done. We are so white, we are reflective. And that concerns me. And I've reached out to some of the Afro-American bloggers that I know, and we're doing some work for Afro-American candidates. But I don't see, and I know there's particularly a younger Afro-American and Hispanic presence in social media. And to get, maybe they're just not active yet. Or maybe they're active in a way that I don't know. But I don't know who the leaders are in that area. I don't know who has a sense of what's going to happen there, and I don't know what the motivations are. So there is there's a lack of integration.
I'll say a few things. I mean, for one, the radio show we were on Left is a show for the African American community, essentially, and Eunice is part of our group. And she said in our speech that she says a lot of groups sort of exclude her, and she said that this is a group that doesn't. And you're right, we probably are majority white. But that's okay. I mean, and then as for the young minority, I'm friends with many of them. I studied abroad in Ecuador, so I 3 years ago, so I have some insight into that, so I could talk with you about that sometime. Because those kids are actually very impassioned and very smart and very active, so there's a lot of potential there.
To state the obvious, if the Hispanic population continues to grow as a proportion of the country as it is, isn't this essentially going to sink the nativist movement, the mainstream Republican movement, the anti-immigration? All these people essentially are shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, I don't know, because I actually saw a poll on MSNBC that 97% of the American population agrees with the immigration law in Arizona.
97%?
That's such a lie. This is an MSNBC poll.
It's about 2/3 the polling I've seen about the Arizona immigration law.
With the Arizona law?
Yeah. As the poll response gets a 2/3 agreement, but it's crafted by our media. So I don't know what the actual sentiment is. I know what the sentiment reported by our media is. And that's not reality.
I mean, it surprised me. I mean, MSNBC they're pretty liberal, And I mean...
That was on MSNBC?
MSNBC.
Polling workshop at the convention. Teach everybody how to spot the statistics that are false and are the ones that aren't as valid, because when
great workshop, that, right?
I already submitted the proposal, but I took a stats class and I got an A in it, which I never thought I would get an A in a math class, but I don't think I can give the presentation. I mean, I know that stuff pretty good now, but I gotta find someone who would want to do the presentation.
You're talking about at the convention?
At the convention, because, the polls on the websites, when people say, even our coffee party polls can't be seen as a true
They're not scientific.
snapshot of the people. You have to randomly poll about 1,000 people, and it has to be truly random, and you have to really, the other problem is this, don't they call people's landlines? How many kids under 25 have a landline phone? I would say 0.
How many kids under 50 have a landline? Not me.
There you go.
So, but you know what?
And
this is a point of fact, though. A lot of these polling companies, especially Zombie, are no longer doing the polling thing. They're doing it via
and that's another way that, you know, is more accurate. But it's really a method that you have to do and as folks like George Lakoff have stated, if any of you read any of his stuff, just the way they ask the questions, like Neil said, you posit a question a certain way, the sentiment gets stirred. Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. So we really have to take those polls with a grain of salt.
That's my office. Where they are, they're in my building.
Really?
Yeah, they're probably one of our customers. I've never talked to them.
Oh, that's weird. I'm surprised you haven't run into it already.
I don't know. I studied history in college, so I see these sort of things as tides. Like they rise and they fall. When anti-immigrant sentiment gets high, you know, like you said, if there is such a rise in population and it becomes so obvious, yeah, maybe that group of people in this time will feel sort of like they've been played the fool and their argument doesn't really make sense anymore. But 30, 40 years from now, the context is different and all of a sudden you have another, you know, situation. I mean, we've had anti-immigrant stuff happening in our country since we came here and kicked out.
Right, exactly. And
So-
I mean, as you say, it's come in waves.
Yeah.
Okay, that, you know, there's a large group of this kind of immigrant, so there's animosity toward those. Eventually, they become
They
part of the
assimilate.
mainstream, and
But
they
the
develop.
Hispanic is different.
Yeah, and I think that there needs to be a
It's very different. The Hispanic population.
Is different than.
Okay, say you go and buy something online, anything, and you got a problem with it. You call up the people who you bought the thing from. You listen to their phone. 1 for English, 2 for Spanish.
Yeah.
How many populations have had that privilege? None of them. So they know, like these big companies know that a significant portion of the population speaks Spanish as the first language.
Yeah, and companies are starting to capitalize on that. You see billboards in Spanish and shop signs in Spanish. I mean,
That's why I feel that in the long run and maybe in the short run, the anti-Hispanic feeling, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. That there is going to be a major voting bloc that they have alienated for.
you hear people on both sides of the aisle saying, well, we know the Hispanics are going to vote conservative. Oh, well, we know the Hispanics are going to vote liberal. Like, everybody
The Tea
gets
Party
it.
is driving Hispanic voters away from the Republican Party at light speed. In Arizona, it has been for the Democrats the gift that's going to keep on giving. But I think we really, with the economic conditions we have to look back to the lessons of the last Great Depression. Because we have that now, and the only thing keeping it from being really visible is unemployment. And right now, what is it, 40 million people on food stamps in this country? That's concealing. We have this safety net, tattered though it may be, and it's concealing the fact that we've got a mess equal to what we had in 1932 right now. And during that time, there were Mexican migrant workers, and the environmental mess in the plains had people moving from Arkansas and Oklahoma to California, and the Hispanics who did not have citizenship were displaced. The same kind of dynamic we see today in Arizona was played out in California. And I've never read on the particulars of this. I'm not enough of a historian of that time period to know the details, but I think that we'll see, you know, a prototype of what we're seeing now will be found if we go and look at the history of that time period.
I've studied that time period quite extensively. I love that time period.
I would respectfully disagree with you in that, in a few details. In that the Great Depression, the Wall Street crash was in October of 1929. FDR was elected in 1932. I mean, there were years where the laissez-faire attitude toward government took place, and the problem will just fix itself. Well, what happened is the problem just got worse. This time, the economy fell through in the summer of 2009. There was an election in the fall of 2009. So the reaction to potentially